and welcome to Today in Woburn. I'm your host, Samantha Stone, and we have some fabulous guests with us this week. We have our mayor, Scott Galvin, as always, who's joined us. We're going to talk about a lot of different city business. We also have two fabulous female entrepreneurs with us, and we're going to talk about their businesses and what they've been up to. So welcome, everyone. Welcome, Scott.
Welcome. Welcome. It's good to be here.
Yeah, we're just welcome, everybody. It's spring, it's sunshine, the days are getting longer, right? I'm all in. We match. You have an orange tie on today. So
yeah, good stuff.
Got our Woburn going. So I wanted to start. I know that we temporarily put testing on hold, and then we have new testing for the month of March. And I wanted we'll go ahead and put up on the screen the details, but just wanted you to step folks through that. That's happening.
Right. It's going to be weekly. So we're going to, we talked about this. You and I discussed the demand has gone down, significantly, but there's still a number of people who depended on that testing and want to get the testing. So we heard from maybe a dozen people and made a decision that, we're continuing with our employee testing every Friday from 2 to 5 and worked it out with Armstrong where we could continue to do the employee and add in residents. So we've set the link up. So residents need to know that it's going to be on Fridays now from 2 to 5. You do have to pre-register, whereas before you could walk in. So people need to mark this in their books that the pre-registration goes till 2 p.m. on Thursday, and the testing, same thing. You get to pick one of 3 slots. Will be every Friday at the high school. It's very convenient. The door is the one adjacent to the track and field. So it's still there, free testing, and I think people will be happy to be able to continue with this to the end of March.
That's great. Thank you for doing that. And I'm glad. It's so great that we're finding ways to help the community, make it easy for people to stay diligent. We know that we've got teachers are now approved for vaccination in Massachusetts. I'm starting to see lots of folks do that. I know
March 11th. Is it March 11th is the day I think they get their first?
Yeah, March 11th is a date. Although I think the federal has been letting, if you go to one of the
you can register. Yeah, you can register for it. But
they're letting some folks do that, which is great. I don't want to get into the school plans because I know that's all a work in progress, but I did want to ask if you had an opinion. One of the things that people have been talking a lot about is the distance between desks. And right now, DESE says they can have 3 feet, which if you go by center of seats, the way they do it, it looks like how the desks were before. There's a little bit of distance. It's not really 3 feet away. We, CDC and others in City Hall and other places, we've been using 6 feet. Do you have any personal opinions or anything on that?
I mean, I just got off a call with Commissioner Riley. We have the MMA group and there's a mayor's group, and they had set up a meeting today for a 4 o'clock call. That's why I was late, but he went through everything that went into their thinking and the 3 feet and the 6 feet. And, I think if you remember back, CDC, they were talking about 3 feet when we started this, and they went with 6 to be a little bit, on the greater side. When you're doing things, they wanted to start off that way. But I think we can handle the 3 feet. I think, the issue that we see now is that the teachers really want to get vaccinated, and can't blame them. I mean, I wish we had prioritized them sooner. So we weren't in this position where it is becoming an issue. And of course that's not a prerequisite for the start, according to Commissioner Riley and the governor, that, it's April 5th, and that's the date that we're starting, regardless of whether they're vaccinated. So we have our work to do on our side, and, teachers are working their best to get vaccinated, and we want to make it convenient for them. We would, if the vaccine becomes more readily available, which doesn't seem like it's going to be before April 5th, we had a great plan where we were going to use the school nurses and get them all vaccinated in one day, 2 days maximum. So now, until we get the vaccine, they're really strongly encouraged that they've got to get their vaccine, at a local CVS or one of the sites or through their primary care. So that's the bigger issue that we're seeing is the vaccine and the teachers' strong push to be vaccinated before they all go back. Well, we're ready, Samantha. I know we're ready to go above and beyond just the elementary, school. We want to go back, middle school and high school all on the 5th. We're ready to do that, but it's still the vaccine, and you know, we want to help our teachers the best we can to get them vaccinated. So that's seems to be a little bit of the, not a little bit, it's a big issue.
Yeah. Well, I hope that that gets resolved. I have seen a lot of teachers being able to get appointments, which we know that wasn't easy to do for lots of folks. So I'm somewhat optimistic, but I'm glad to hear everybody's watching that. And I know that our city was ready and willing to organize it if we were able to get supplies. So that's helpful to know. I want to talk a little bit more about COVID on a couple other quick things before we go over some other topics. So I have all the interactions I've had with the police department, and they haven't been many. I haven't really been out and about very much. And so I haven't been speeding or doing anything that has gotten me pulled over or anything. But when I have seen folks underneath, they've been wearing masks. But there have been a couple folks who wrote in and asked what our department policy was, because they have maybe seen some officers on duty without wearing masks. Do we have a standard policy across the
Yeah, the policy is that they're all supposed to have masks on. That's what the policy is. So,
that's what I thought.
you know, sometimes, we'll get calls here and there from different people who see them without a mask. And then, if they call down here or call down to the police department, if they call down here, we make sure I send a message to the chief to say they've got to make sure they have their masks on. And, for the most part, I think they've been very good about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think we certainly have seen, for the most part, I think that is true. And that's the same policy for all departments, not just the police department, right? I mean, the question came up around the police department, but that's true for the fire staff and city hall employees and everything. So, okay, great. Thanks for verifying that.
Sure.
I also saw that we've got new micro grants available. Is this an extension of the old program, or is it an
extension of the old one? We still have the money available, and we want to make sure they're not new. We don't want to leave that money on the table. We're trying to make sure that the smaller businesses know that it's out there for them. We're not real happy with the application process. It is a little bit onerous for some of these small businesses to work their way through it, but we just want to let them know it's out there. If they have any questions, we can try to point them in the right direction.
Awesome. I love it. And then we have, so I heard that Lindsay was stepping down from, is it city council or just the president position?
She said she's resigning from the city council.
Okay. And which I'm very sad about. So do you have I know, because you were on city council, can you guys just step us through what's the process when that happens?
Yeah.
What happens next? It's out of cycle for us, right?
So yeah, this is, it's a function of the city charter, where if a sitting alderman isn't able to finish their term for whatever reason, the remaining city councilors will fill that position. And that's happened. It seems like it's happened, it just happened with Mike Anderson, who became a judge. Mm-hmm. And Joe Demers was selected by the city council.
Gosh, it feels like it was. Chief
Ferrulo was the same. So it's happened quite a bit recently, where an alderman has, left, where Rich Haggerty was elected and his term was in midstream. So yeah, and then the city council makes the election. So right now, Lindsay has stepped down. Ed Tedesco was elected by his peers to be the city council president. He's arranging with human resources to take applications in. They'll have a process where everybody gets an opportunity who wants to apply for the position, and then the council will have interviews, narrow it down, and then make a selection. So they hope to get this all done within the next month. So that will be posted very shortly by the city council president.
Okay. And is Lindsay finishing up that month term, or is she done?
She retired effective last Tuesday.
Okay. All right. Thank you for clarifying. I just want to make sure. We wish her good luck. I understand there was a conflict with work or something. So
right. Yes, some other,
Yeah. So sad to see her go, but glad to hear.
She's great. She was great city councilor, and she was in a short time was a very effective president, where she controlled meetings very.
I thought she did a beautiful job. I really particularly enjoyed how she engaged with the community to explain things that she thought people might not understand what was happening, and she took that moment to pause and stuff. So we'll certainly, the bar is high that she left, that she leaves behind.
She was a good president, and an excellent Zoom president, the best we've ever had.
Yeah, that's new leaps with the Zoom stuff, right? It changed the dynamics part of it. Yeah. Awesome. And then we are also on the hunt for a new town clerk, correct?
City Clerk Campbell took a job with the state, a very
A great job for him.
very good job,
Yeah,
a very important job. He's in the campaign finance for elected officials. He deals with all mayors, state reps, state senate. So he's got it's a very responsible job and a lot of power with it. So he'll do a great job. I mean, he was, his work at city clerk was top notch, and we're going to miss him. And that process again is a city council appointment.
Okay.
So they'll be looking to fill that. They'll be putting out job description and requests for resumes, and they'll be filling that sometime in April and middle of April to the beginning of May. So we'll be when Bill leaves April 5th or thereabouts, April 5th. Joyce Gray, who's the assistant, will step in as the acting clerk. I'm not sure if she's going to be applying for it. I don't know. Okay. But we'll know when when
it officially releases. Yeah. Great. Good. Well, that's great. Last little sort of staffing thing. We talked a little bit about this before, but I think it was too early to know what we were going to do. We don't currently have a quorum of library trustees. We know there's legislation going through. Is there a goal of getting one more seat in so that we can have some meetings?
Well, yeah, we're talking about that internally, how we are going to handle that, because one of the things that I do want to do is start putting together the the criteria and not to say requirements, but what we're looking for in a trustee, some of the different skills, backgrounds, diversity. So it's a whole range of things that we're looking for to put together. So I don't know if we're looking at that fifth trustee too, but I'm also cognizant that I want to have an open slate so we can put in people for when that legislation is approved, put all the people in.
Awesome. Well, I love it. That's great, Scott. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Great catching
up. So it's a good week. Next week we set the clocks ahead, and
yes, I forgot all about that. I'm glad you mentioned it. And maybe we can get our new interim library director, and maybe not next week. I want to give him a couple weeks to get his feet up.
He'd definitely be good. I was thinking we always think of, we can talk offline about different department heads that you can get. Yeah. One of them that I was thinking about was Rick Jolly. He's the substance abuse coordinator.
Oh, great. Yeah.
Just because we've had the pandemic, people say the numbers are going down, but we still see, 1, 2, couple overdoses every week, which is still very difficult. But he's been working with that. So sometime you might want to have him in for 15 minutes.
I think that sounds great. Look, one overdose is too many, right? There's,
and we're seeing 1, 2 a week.
Yeah. Which is certainly, it's encouraging the numbers are down, but we want them gone. So
no, it's not going away. And some of them unfortunately aren't being reported. Some of them are, people have become with COVID, they've become adept at handling an overdose, whether it's a loved one or whatever. They've got the Narcan in their house, so some of them are going unreported. So when I say 1 or 2, that's probably not very accurate, but it is it's what's being reported.
Yeah, well, we'll definitely follow up on that. Lauren will help me do that. So
good to talk to you. Sorry I was late, and looking forward to the next month. It's going to be real interesting with we want to get kids back to school. I think that's a really, really great thing, and it's important that we get them back. So we're really excited about that. I know parents are really excited to get their kids back, and we just have to work with the teachers to make sure that they're it's done right and they're safe and everybody's safe.
Yeah, look, we love our kids, but we want them out of the house.
We want them all back in school, and they want to be back in school.
Yeah, and just to be clear, there will be a virtual option for those families who have a need to do that. I don't want anybody panicking. There will be. What we're really talking about is adapting out of the hybrid model, which has been hard on everyone, right?
Yeah.
That's been a really tough.
So it's an exciting time. We're really definitely heading in the right direction.
Awesome. Thanks, Scott. I appreciate it.
Okay. See you, everybody. Thank you.
Great. So I'd like to now invite Ann Chatfield. Ann is a realtor in Woburn. She's also one of my dear friends. And I'm really excited to have her on board, because one of the things that I've observed is that the real estate market is actually not behaving the way I intuitively would have expected in a economic, uncertainty, right? I would have expected fewer homes to be on market, prices to be down, but it doesn't feel that way. Tell us what's been going on.
Yeah, you and me both. It was an odd 2020. What really made it this way is the low interest rates. I mean, some people got as low as 2.5%, which increases your buying power and gives you the opportunity to buy a little bit more because you're not, paying so much interest on that loan that you're borrowing. The other thing was so many people, because they're working from home, we're sitting there and staring at their walls for so long, and we're like, I don't like these walls. We need something better. Your whole family's in a home and you're like, oh, wow, we really need more space. Or you're not commuting anymore. So that allowed all of these, Cambridge, Somerville people to come out to, and Boston to come out to the suburbs in order to buy. So it just really, what happened is the buyer pool inflated and, the inventory has still stayed so low.
That actually is logical explanations, which is why I'm not in real estate, because I didn't think of any of those things having an effect. So thank you for that. You have moved to Woburn from California a number of years ago. Tell us what you love about being here. I mean, it's clearly very different from where you came from.
Yeah, weather aside, it's very different. However, I'm from Northern California, so I had some cold weather behind me. But what I really love the most about Woburn is the community and the growth of the city. I was born and raised in Sacramento, and while it's a large city, we had various neighborhoods and small little communities where you got to know your neighbors, and you go to the grocery store and you recognize them. You're walking around Horn Pond and you recognize them. You give a little nod and a wave. And I like the fact too that not everybody is from here. They're kind of all coming in like a melting pot to live together. And yet we all have the same care about the community and we want what's best for the community. And that just makes me feel good living here.
Yeah, we've been really, I think, fortunate. Woburn is one of those cities to me that has we are a city and we have the services of a city and we have easy access to transportation of a city. For the most part, I know that that's not universal, but we have some good stuff there. But we also still feel kind of like a small town sometimes. Like if we go into City Hall, you'll see someone, or you're, anywhere you can bump into folks that or recognize from some activity, some program, some group that you're a part of.
Well, I laugh because where I grew up, if you had a mailbox at the end of your driveway, it was considered rural. You lived in like a rural. So I moved here and my father would come to visit from California. He's like, this is a city, right? And I said, yeah. And he said, but your mailbox is at the end of the driveway. I said, I know, it's just, this is the way that it is. So we kind of laugh about it. And you're right. That's too the good part. Like we have those city services, but it has that rural feel that's kind of nice.
Yeah, it really is. And you mentioned Horn Pond, which is just a nice little gem that we have here. When you are introducing, your clients who maybe aren't as familiar with Woburn, and maybe they're looking for a home in Woburn or the surrounding areas, what are some of the things that you point out about our city that you want them to know about that is exciting for them?
The number one thing is location. I mean, it's a fantastic location. You can get into Cambridge and Somerville very easily. You can get to 95, you can get to 93. Commute wise, it's great. And you can use the commuter rail. You can either go to the Anderson stop or go to Winchester or take a bus to Alewife. I mean, there's so many opportunities for that. Yes, the outdoor space too is fantastic that we have, from Horn Pond to all the other conservation areas and trails that surround us, in various towns and cities. It makes it such a great location. And it has that small town charm and feel, like you said, you're going to City Hall or you go to, city center and you kind of walk and you sort of look around and everything's right there.
It is so nice to see that. One of the things, Anne, that I always love to see is when you're posting somewhere, you might have a first-time home buyer or a veteran home buyer or someone who's downsizing. And so home prices are elevated, and we know that. And Woburn isn't an inexpensive place to buy a home, but you've been very creative about helping your clients find something that was a right fit for them. What's it like when you've got that first time home buyer who gets the house they want, and you do your magic and you get their offer accepted? And I don't think we all realize how much hard work goes into behind the scenes that a realtor does to help share a little bit of that stuff, that magic fairy dust you put over stuff.
Oh, I get the chills just when you're talking to me about it, because it is such a magical thing. I mean, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It's tough being a buyer in this market right now, in a seller's market. You might be writing multiple offers and you think this is my dream home. And unfortunately, someone else has offered more, the terms are different, and so you don't get it. But it's continuing to find that home. And what I really like more is talking to the buyers after their offers accepted. How are you going to make this your home? I can't wait to see how you do your furniture. I can't wait to see your wall colors that you do and things like that. But that feeling when you get to make that phone call of your offer's been accepted, especially if you've had to make a few offers and they weren't accepted. I had clients, and I'll tell you a quick story. I had these clients and they called me and they said, a house across the street from our best friends is on the market. And I said, oh, okay. And they said, we want to buy it. And I said, well, all right, let's, go look at it. We got to make an offer. We got to, do everything necessary. And so I felt so much pressure of, oh my gosh, they're dying to have this home. They want to live across the street from their best friends and their godson. So I was like pacing, and I wrote up the offer and we made it as strong as they could go. And, they had a budget. We stayed within the budget and their offer was accepted. And it was the best phone call that I could make, telling them you get to live across the street from your best friends. And I was a part of that and I helped that happen. And, then I was jealous. I was like, I want to live across the street from my best friends.
Me too, Anne. I want that too. That's such a great example. I'll never forget. Before I am in the home that I'm in now in Woburn, we actually made an offer at a house in Reading. And we loved the house, and we were heartbroken when the sellers decided not to sell it. So we didn't lose it to somebody else. I was buying, I'm not going to say how many years because I'll feel really old, but a long time ago. And they just decided, you know what? All of a sudden it became real. We're not ready to let go of the house that we raised our family in, and they pulled out. I was heartbroken. I was devastated, but we ended up finding the house that I'm in now, which is absolutely the right place for us. And I'm so glad that we've been able to raise our family here and everything. So as hard as it sometimes is, it does work out in the end if you keep persistent.
Yeah. And I tell my clients, everything happens for a reason. I truly believe that. And I have to, make them recognize that and realize it. And, some days I'm wearing a cheerleader hat. Come on, let's keep going, keep going and looking at those open houses. Don't get discouraged. You will find a home, and you will find the right home for you, or you'll create the home that's right for you.
I love that. I do think no matter what house it is, we always have to create that home. And it's a wonderful thing that I know you're very good at helping people picture what it could be, right? To be for themselves. Before I jump over to Jen, I just want to spend a moment and ask, there's a lot of realtors. We're really fortunate to live in an area that has a lot of houses on the market and being bought, and great communities. What are some of the ways that you, as a business leader and as yourself, building your own business, how do you get out there, and what are some of the ways you differentiate yourself?
That's there are a lot of real estate agents, and I've had the pleasure and honor of working with a lot of them, in the Woburn area and surrounding towns. One thing that I do think sets me apart is I listen. Even when a client's not speaking to me, I am listening. I am paying attention to, when they're talking to their partner or, somebody, a parent that's come along. I'm listening to that conversation and I'm picking up things that they don't realize that they're telling me. So I think, when I'm listening to them, I'm able to help them decide, is this the right house for them? They are sometimes walking in and they're oohing and awing at that beautiful kitchen and the hardwood gleaming floors and that beautiful paint color. And I'm coming in and like, well, that is all great, but I noticed this and this, so I'm honest with them too. And seeing the pros and the cons of each house. I mean, I've probably maybe talked people out of putting an offer on a house because I saw things that they didn't pay attention to, and I said, oh, that could be sort of a red flag. When I'm working with sellers, asking them, do you have to have a certain net proceeds? Do you have to move at a certain time? Just again, listening to people is really what sets me apart. And I think, as clients begin to work with me, they realize that and they notice. They say, I didn't even say that to you. And I said, I know, but I just overheard it.
I was watching. Yeah, even things like body language, right? Tell us a lot sometimes. So, thank you so much for joining me today. I'm so pleased to recognize some of the amazing women that are in our community doing great stuff, like helping people find their homes. And really appreciate you joining us, Anne. And we didn't get to see Scotty, but Anne has a amazing dog poodle that we love. So if she's on in the future, maybe Scotty will make an appearance.
Yeah. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
I love it. Excellent. Jen, thank you so much for joining me. Jen Mahan is education specialist and consultant and works with families to get all the needs and traverse the school systems and all kinds of things. And I will do a terrible job of describing what you do. So I'm going to let you describe it.
Okay. Well, thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to be here. And I think honestly, before I start, I wanted to put my plug into the Woburn Public Schools. I do a lot of work in a lot of public school districts, and throughout this pandemic, Woburn Public Schools has done an unbelievable job. I mean, the teachers and the staff and the administrators recreated a system from the ground up in less than 6 months, and they did it very, very well. So in answer to your question, my job really is I work as an educational advocate. So what that means is I use my background. I was in the public schools for over 20 years, and I use that background to help families navigate through the special education process. Actually, through the special education process, through the 504 accommodation plan process. I've been doing a lot of mental health pieces lately. I do a lot of parent coaching and working with individual students. So it was a big leap of faith on my husband's part when he was like, okay, I can see that you're tired from the public schools. I ended my career as a special education director. So I've sat in the IEP meeting room as a variety of roles. And he's like, okay, I can see that you're tired. And he's like, you're too young to be this exhausted. So we took a leap of faith, and it was nice to be able to establish my own business. And, it gave me a lot of flexibility with my family. So I think that is one of the bonuses of having my own business. But the biggest bonus is I get to help so many different families and so many different children with a variety of needs. I have families that their children are non-ambulatory and nonverbal. And then I have families that children, they're struggling with maybe a little bit with reading or writing. So I have the full gamut of experience, whether it's a more intensive need or something that doesn't require quite as much intensity. The other piece that I bring to this that I really love is that I work really well with the district. So I'm in so many different communities, and I've sat in the chair, like I've been the principal, I've been the teacher, and I can go in and talk with people and say, I know how you're feeling, I get it, but let's take a step back and remember that this is somebody's child, and we really need to focus on what this child needs now. And sometimes it's an easy conversation, sometimes it's hard, but we work through it as a group, and it's a daunting process for families. So, I try to make myself as available to families as I can, which is also the beauty of running your own business. I can say, like, look, all right, you want to talk on a Saturday? All right. I don't have hockey right now. I don't have swimming. I don't have soccer. I don't have wrestling, but, let's carve out a time. And, lately I take a lot of calls in my mobile office in my driveway.
You're certainly not. I think work hours have really shifted for a lot of people. So I think a lot of times there's a perception that we need an advocate when things are going badly, when we're not getting the services we want. And that is certainly a time when an advocate can help us. But sometimes we need an advocate just to navigate and understand. It's not always a negative confrontational situation. Am I correct in that?
You are. You're absolutely correct. And you know what? I would say 50% of the phone calls that I get are people who are in major crisis and things are at a critical level. But then the other, 50% is people saying like, okay, we're at this point and I want to push my child a little further. What can we do? And so it's finding that balance. The critical needs have really expanded, during the pandemic. I would say that my client base has really expanded in regards to children displaying a lot of social emotional needs. And a lot of the too, I think, is that as parents, we are seeing how our children learn, and we're picking up on these different nuances, and a lot of people are hitting the panic button. And some of it is me just saying like, okay, well, let's push pause. Let's see where we're at. Let's take some good notes. Let's contact the school. So one of the things I think that's so important for families is, if you are worried in any way, shape, or form, talk to your child's teacher. They will help you. It sometimes feels easier to kind of go straight to the top. But you know what? Your child's teacher sees them day in and day out. They know their body language. They know their nuances. They know their areas of strength and their areas for challenge. So I always tell families, it's one of the first questions I ask. I'm like, have you talked to the teacher? Because they know, and if that doesn't lead to satisfactory results, then generally people reach out to me and we have to, go a little bit further and ask some different questions. But it's a great job. I love what I do. And, the success stories are always out there, even in the situations that feel so dire, the positive always outweighs the negative every single time.
Well, I love that. One of the things that is incumbent about anybody who runs their own business is to figure out how to market their business, right? And it's always a challenge when you offer a service like this, where you're supporting families who have been struggling and who may not want to be talking about that publicly, or who may, it's privacy issues with students. So what are some of the ways that you've grown your practice and let people know about all the great work that you're doing?
So that's a terrific question. I have to be honest, I do a lot of word of mouth. Being a former school person, I take confidentiality very seriously. I mean, I always tell families, like, your friend may know you work with me, but I'm never going to tell them that you work with me. Whatever you guys talk about over coffee is up to you. But so I hesitate to use a lot of the social media pieces, because it is so family and student and child specific. And again, I would lose hours of sleep if I thought anybody's confidentiality was breached. I mean, I have a little over 40 something clients, and I don't think anybody has felt like I was not confidential, because it is, it's a very personal journey. And it's funny because once I get families to a certain place, I'm like, so there's other families that are going through similar things, and here's how you can connect, so I never really connect them per se, but I give them the resources where they can, because, when you have a child with a disability, there's so many joys that come with it, but there's so many days that are really difficult, and you need somebody to celebrate with, and you need somebody to cry with when you're feeling frustrated. So I will say it's a lot of word of mouth. I thought about Facebook a little bit, but again, it makes me nervous, and that makes me feel like I'm not in complete control with that. Yeah. So I do. I mean, and I think, as my business has grown over the years, it is most everybody's word of mouth. And we heard about you from so-and-so, or I talked to this doctor and they said we should call you. So it really works out that way, but it does protect everybody's privacy, which is important.
Incredibly important, because especially if someone's struggling, that you don't want to add another layer of frustration or concern to them. So that's amazing. For any family, you had mentioned earlier, like the very first thing you always tell people to do is, like, if somebody's struggling, talk to the teacher. Yep. Let's say that hasn't worked for whatever reason. How does somebody know when they are ready for an advocate, or how should they go about thinking about engaging a service like that?
Yeah. So I think it's case by case. I always encourage families, like, you have your cohort of friends within the schools, start talking to them. This is what I think. You can always talk to the classroom the school principal, and the other thing is, if you truly believe that your child is in need of, special education services, parents have the right to request an evaluation for their child, in an area of a disability that they may suspect. That doesn't mean that everybody should go out and get their child tested. You want to truly make sure that you're isolating where you think their challenges may lie. And, for some families, it's very easy because it can be very obvious what's going on. But for some other families, it's a little more challenging because it's subtle. shows up. So you see something one day, but then you don't see it the next. So again, if you truly feel like you need something, you can always make that request, but talk to your mom friends, your dad friends, the grandparents, the aunts, the uncles, people who've been through the system. And then everybody's welcome to call me, and I'd probably say the same thing, but your child's teacher is going to know first and foremost, and they're going to give you probably the best advice to follow. So.
I think that's really important and valuable. And I think the other thing we have to remember is a little bit to trust our instincts. I think sometimes because we're not education experts and because we don't always know everything that goes in the school, we see something that maybe a teacher or the school is missing, and we sort of let ourselves get talked out of it. And sometimes just talking to other families and recognizing that is, is something to follow up on, right? And
and at the end of the day, parents know their children the best, and you can tell one day from the next what feels right and what feels like maybe something's not going along as smoothly as I had hoped. And I would say that's part of what's happened in the pandemic. I mean, a lot of the younger children are really struggling with some of those, it's coming across as anxiety, which then looks like it's a behavioral issue, but it's just that they're little, and it's their way of saying, like, doesn't feel like there's any control in my world. I'm trying to learn from my teacher through Zoom, which, is so hard for everybody. And again, the teachers have done an amazing job, but those things start to pop up, and sometimes it's a blessing because it could be something that maybe you would see later on as they get older. And if we can find something that needs to be helped right now, then it makes for a better trajectory as they get into being in teenagers and high school and stuff. So, but parents, your child best, and don't be afraid to ask questions. Don't be afraid to call people. It's important, but I will say, one thing about this pandemic that has been so great is that I have a few families that I work with that their children were refusing to go to school. They would absolutely not go because it was too much. And this digital platform and remote learning has shifted their lives. And, I've had children going from they were struggling so much to now just the safety of the screen. They went from, failing to straight A's and honor rolls. So, there is positives to some of this digital learning and things like that. And that's something that I do hope continues for, some of the kids that it's hard to go to school, because there's a lot of children out there, and they fly under the radar, but this has been good for them.
So a lot of times, I know when we talk about special education, we think of sort of early education and sort of addressing that. A lot of students are identified in their elementary years as needing support and services and such, but sometimes kids are middle school, high school age before patterns emerge or something changes and they need support. In what ways is it different working with a young adult student and their family versus, very young students and their families?
You know what? The one thing I love about working with the older kids is we teach them the skills to be a partner in all of their educational needs. And once a child is 14, they can attend, their parent-teacher conferences and IEP meetings and stuff. But what's so refreshing is sitting on a call with a 15-year-old or a 16-year-old, and I say, tell me what's hard for you. And they tell me, I'd say, okay, so you just told me, like, now we just have to tell your teachers. And I do a lot of that, I'm your voice, but I'm going to start to fade back, and I need you to develop that skill. But, watch me, watch your parents, listen to the conversations in the room. So I think when you're working with the young adults and they're really building their self-advocacy skills. And, some of my guys who are graduating, I'm like, okay, so you're ready to go to college. Like, you've got this, you're going to do it. But remember, they're like, we know when we get there, we have to ask for help if we need it. I said, nobody knows. We're not mind readers. So it's okay to say, I'm unsure. Can you help me with this? Or I used to struggle with this and I need you to guide me. So I think that's one of the nice things with the bigger kids is that you get to really watch them grow and mature. And some of I even have a couple of little guys who are like, 6, they're like, can I get extra recess? I'm like, so I can't get you extra recess or more.
These are smart. These are going to be our future leaders.
Yeah. I'm like, so, well, I appreciate that you want some more downtime because it's fun to visit with your friends. I said, that's not how this is going to work. They're like, all right. But it is, it's so rewarding watching the kids really start to understand their own needs and being able to articulate that, because at some point we open up the doors and say, okay, here's the world and you need to know how to navigate it, with or without the challenges you may have faced. So we need to build that capacity. So that's where I do a lot of work with families too, is, okay, how can we do this? What do we need? What do they need? And working with
I
kids.
love it. I wonder, I don't know if this has ever happened. Do you ever, not sometimes, most of the time, when we talk about special education services or education advocacy, we talk about students who have a particular area of challenge or challenges that need to be addressed. But sometimes our gifted students don't quite fit into the normal classroom environment and may not be taking as much away from it as they would like and need as well. Do you ever work with students like that to help build curriculums that challenge them and excite them?
I do. And you know what? It's refreshing to do that, because I get to say, well, wait a minute. So usually I'm thinking, how can we tailor this to make it a little bit easier? So I just flip the conversation. How do we tailor this to challenge the child? And what can we give this student that's going to make them more independent, more of a self-starter, so building in the capacity that way. So with the children who exceed our expectations on a regular basis, there's always room to grow. And I'm a huge fan of like independent study. Let's sit down and have a conversation with the child and say, what are you interested in? Colonial America? Great. That's a broad topic. Let's narrow your focus. Or the Civil War. Terrific. What part of the Civil War? Narrow your focus, and giving them that avenue to really start to dive deep into, how do I research? How do I put the paper together? How do I make it into a presentation? And then giving them the opportunity to share it with, their classmates or other teachers. Hey, let's get the history department together. I'd like to share with you my impressions of the Reconstruction era. So and again, now we're building that self-advocacy and we're building that independence and it's okay to be really smart and be able to showcase this for folks. So again, it's building up their self-esteem and giving people giving the kids tools to do it.
Well, I love it. Thank you so much for being a guest on the show, Jen, today. It's been wonderful chatting with you.
Thanks for having me. I hope you guys have a great rest of your month. I'm anxious to see who's coming on next. So it'll be something to look forward to. And I wish everybody a happy March and the end to COVID.
Yes, I think we all wish for that. So as always, thank you all for watching and continue to take good care of each other.